On a chilly evening, with a light drizzle falling from the sky, the neon lights of a gas station lit up the damp streets of Los Angeles. Keanu Reeves, famous for his down-to-earth nature off-screen, pulled over to fuel up his motorcycle. Everything seemed like a normal night until something caught his eye, making him stop. A young, pregnant woman, visibly worn out, was running back and forth. Between lifting heavy boxes and refueling cars, she barely had a moment to catch her breath. What Keanu did next left everyone at the station speechless and made a huge difference in the woman's life. You won't believe the impact of his simple yet powerful act. Stay tuned for a story that will warm your heart and give you a sense of hope. But before we continue, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, we've got another special one lined up. The night in Los Angeles felt calm, yet carried a faint sense of sadness. A gas station on a quiet street flickered with red and blue neon lights, reflecting off the wet pavement beneath the constant drizzle. To most people, it was just another pit stop. But for Emily, the gas station meant the difference between getting by and survival. 7 months pregnant, Emily moved with determination, cleaning windshields and checking oil for busy customers. Her thin jacket and worn-out uniform barely shielded her from the cold, but she had no choice but to push through. Tonight's earnings were vital to pay the rent for another month. Her 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, sat on a plastic chair beneath the station's awning, staying dry from the rain. In her small hands, she tightly gripped a faded red pencil, focused on an old activity book. Next to her were 2 other pencils, blue and yellow, equally worn down. With so little, Sophia poured all her attention into her drawings, each one seeming to hold deep meaning. As Emily worked, the rumble of a motorcycle engine echoed across the station. A black motorcycle coasted smoothly up to one of the pumps. Keanu Reeves, dressed in a black leather jacket and helmet, dismounted with ease. He took off his helmet, revealing damp, tousled hair from the rain. Keanu scanned the scene, taking in his surroundings. His gaze briefly rested on Emily, noticing the way she cleaned a windshield with precision, still offering a polite smile to customers despite her exhaustion. His attention then shifted to Sophia. Observing her as she worked on her sketch, it seemed as though she was creating something important. Intrigued, Keanu walked over to the child, peering at her drawing. It depicted a simple but detailed scene: a kitchen with steaming pots, a table in the center, and a counter with an empty sign. Keanu leaned in slightly, studying the careful lines, noticing how Sophia seemed to focus intently on one particular part of the drawing that was still incomplete. "Do you like to draw?" he asked gently. Sophia looked up, surprised by the question, but nodded quietly. "I draw places," she replied softly. "Places I want to go." Keanu smiled warmly. "In this drawing, what is it?" Sophia paused, looking back at her unfinished sketch. Her little fingers tightened around the red pencil, as if weighing what to say next. Before she could speak, Emily appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sophia, don't trouble the gentleman," she said with a polite smile. "She's not bothering me," Keanu reassured her. "In fact, I was just learning about her drawings and the places she dreams of seeing." Emily shot him a look that was a mix of curiosity and caution, but before she could respond, a car honked from the next pump. "Excuse me," she said, turning to tend to the customer. Keanu stood for a moment, watching Emily return to her work. His gaze shifted back to Sophia and her unfinished drawing. There was something about this moment that felt larger than he could fully understand. Keanu found himself staring at the sketch as Sophia added more details, though he couldn't pinpoint why. That simple sheet of paper seemed to hold more than just pencil marks. It seemed to hold a dream, one that Keanu was about to uncover. Emily wiped the last of the windshield, but her movements had slowed. The weight of her pregnancy pressed heavily on her lower back, sending sharp waves of pain with every step she took. She tried to hide the discomfort, but each time she bent down or reached across to clean the center of the glass, her exhaustion showed on her face. When the final customer left, she leaned gently against one of the pumps, trying to relieve some of the strain on her back. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, fighting back tears. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the emotional toll, the ongoing fatigue of nights like this. Keanu noticed from a distance, but didn't move right away. He watched as she adjusted her uniform, forced a smile, and then walked back toward the station counter. Sophia, sitting in her weathered plastic chair, glanced up from her sketchbook and saw her mother's discomfort. "Are you okay, Mama?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Emily replied, offering a smile as she sank into the chair next to her daughter. Keanu noticed the hesitation in Emily's voice and finally approached. "Excuse me," he said gently, making sure not to startle her. "Do you need help with anything? You seem tired." Emily looked up, surprised, but instinctively she wanted to say no. "Thank you, but I'm fine. Just a little back pain. It's normal with pregnancy." "Normal shouldn't mean constant," Keanu said calmly, his tone full of kindness, making Emily pause. She lowered her gaze, shaking her head. "There's not much to be done. It's just part of life." She sighed. Keanu didn't press further, but he saw how she was supporting her lower back as she sat. He knelt down slightly, keeping a respectful distance. "Do you do this every night?" he asked. Emily nodded, her eyes on the horizon instead of him. "2 nights a week here, and in the mornings I clean offices. It's what pays the bills and keeps Sophia in school." Keanu fell silent for a moment, taking in what she had shared. "And when do you rest?" he asked quietly. Emily let out a humorless laugh. "Rest? I don't really have time for that. Bills don't wait, and with the baby coming, I need to work even more. There's no choice." "It shouldn't be like this," Keanu said softly, almost as a whisper. Emily met his eyes for the first time. Her gaze was heavy with exhaustion. "But it is," she replied. "At least for me. I made choices that brought me here. I can't complain. It doesn't help." Sophia, who had been listening quietly, placed her small hand on her mother's. "You do everything for me, Mama." Emily's face softened, but her eyes filled with tears. "Because you're all that matters, Sophia," she whispered. "You're the reason I keep going." Keanu watched the tender exchange between mother and daughter, feeling an overwhelming empathy for Emily. He realized that this woman wasn't just dealing with the physical weight of pregnancy and long shifts, but also the emotional burden of making sure Sophia was safe and had a good life, one that felt impossible at times. "Sometimes," Emily's voice faltered, "I wonder if I'm doing enough. If one day she'll look back and think I fought, but I never really lived, that I never gave her anything, something beautiful." Sophia gripped her mother's hand tightly. "You give me everything, Mama." Emily smiled softly, but her eyes betrayed a deeper sadness. Keanu sensed there was something more she wasn't saying. "What about your father?" he asked gently. Emily paused for a moment, her gaze distant before she replied. "He left when he found out I was pregnant again." Keanu's chest tightened. He said he couldn't take on another responsibility. It was already tough enough with one kid. Emily's voice wavered as she continued. "So he packed up and left." Sophia looked up at her mother with eyes full of sadness, though she remained quiet. Emily gave her daughter's hand a gentle squeeze, trying to offer reassurance. "And what did you do, Emily?" Keanu asked softly. Emily inhaled deeply, her posture straightening with an almost rehearsed strength. "I kept going, because I didn't have any other choice." A car horn blared in the distance, interrupting the moment. Straightening her shoulders, Emily turned to get back to work. "Excuse me, sir, duty calls," she said. Keanu stood there, watching her walk away. He noticed she limped slightly, a subtle reminder of the weight she carried both from her pregnancy and the emotional toll of her circumstances. His gaze shifted back to Sophia, who had returned to her chair, still clutching the red pencil. Yet her eyes remained fixed on her mother, worry too deep for someone her age. "Your mum works a lot," Keanu observed gently, lowering himself to Sophia's level. The little girl nodded, gripping the pencil tightly in her tiny hands. "She cries sometimes, when she thinks I'm asleep." Keanu's heart ached. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Because she's tired," Sophia answered slowly, "and because, like Mama said, Papa left." Sophia's voice grew stronger as she continued. "When he found out about the baby, he said he didn't want another mouth to feed." Keanu stayed silent, letting the weight of her words settle in. He turned his attention back to Emily. At that moment, something inside him shifted. The struggles she faced, combined with the faint hope still in Sophia's eyes, called him to action. Keanu stood tall, a sense of urgency building in his chest. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. Whatever he was about to do would change everything for them. The light drizzle in the air made everything feel heavier. Emily adjusted her jacket, a shiver passing through her fatigued body. Sophia, sitting beside her, kept drawing, but looked up frequently at her mother, as if she could sense her burdens. Keanu stood a few paces away, watching the quiet exchange between the two. He couldn't ignore the contrast. Sophia's bright innocence and Emily's visible weariness, despite her best efforts to hide the toll her life was taking on her. "Can I ask you something?" Keanu's voice broke the silence in a calm tone. Emily looked up, surprised, but nodded for him to continue. "If you had one chance, just one, to do something different, what would it be?" Emily hesitated. The question seemed simple, but the weight of it was profound. She glanced down at the wet ground, pondering for a moment. "I don't know. I don't think I can afford to think that way anymore. There's no space for what-ifs when you have bills to pay and kids to raise." Keanu nodded, understanding her response. "I imagine you've had to give up a lot because of that." "Giving up? That's not the right word," Emily said quietly. "It's just that," she hesitated, trying to find the right words. "Life doesn't give you room for certain dreams. You can't think about aspirations when you're struggling to pay rent." Sophia looked up from her sketch and met her mother's gaze. "But you still cook, Mama. You make the best lasagna I've ever tasted." Emily smiled softly, though there was a trace of sadness in her laugh. Cooking lasagna at home and managing a restaurant are two entirely different things, sweetheart. "But you've always wanted a restaurant, haven't you?" Keanu asked, now turning his focus back to Emily. She was quiet for a moment, her voice quiet when she spoke. "Yes, when I was younger." Before everything changed, before Marco, Keanu noticed the weight of her words as she mentioned his name. "Your husband?" Emily nodded, her eyes looking off into the distance. "When we got married, we dreamt about opening a restaurant together. He always told me I had a gift, that my passion for food was something special. But after Sophia was born, everything got harder. And when I found out I was pregnant again, he left." Sophia gripped her mother's hand tightly, silently offering support. Emily paused, swallowing before she continued. He said he couldn't handle another responsibility, that he didn't want another burden. And then he just walked out. Keanu felt his chest tighten with a pang of sympathy. He glanced at Sophia, who had returned to her drawing, and then at Emily, who was trying to hold herself together. He sat up straighter, looking at her with a serious expression. Maybe it feels like you have no choices right now. But what if there was a way to change that? What if you had some help? Emily frowned, clearly unconvinced. I appreciate the offer, but I don't need handouts. I'm fine. Keanu's voice remained calm but firm. I'm not talking about handouts, Emily. I'm talking about a chance, an opportunity to start dreaming again. Emily shook her head, wrestling with his words. Why do you care? I'm just nobody. Because everyone deserves the chance to dream, Keanu said quietly. And you deserve more than just getting by. His tone was firm. I'll be back tomorrow. Emily watched him, unsure how to respond. Why? Because I believe you deserve more than this, he said, gesturing to the station and Sophia's notebook. See you tomorrow. As Keanu walked toward his motorcycle, Emily stood still, speechless. She wasn't sure how to interpret his promise to return, but what he brought the next day would be something she never could have imagined. The next morning, after finishing her shift at the gas station, Emily was putting her things together behind the counter when she heard the familiar sound of a deep motorcycle engine. It wasn't a coincidence. Sophia, who'd been drawing beside her, paused and glanced toward the sound in curiosity. Keanu pulled his motorcycle into the same spot as the night before, stepping off with a relaxed smile, 2 large paper bags in hand. He looked calm, but there was a sense of purpose in the way he moved, like he knew exactly what he was doing. Good morning, he greeted as he approached. Emily stared at him, still a little suspicious. You actually came back. I said I would, Keanu replied simply. He placed the bags on the counter, then turned to Sophia. Good morning, Sophia. Good morning, Sophia said excitedly. Her gaze was immediately drawn to the bags, her curiosity piqued by what they might contain. Keanu noticed Emily's hesitation and turned to her. Before you say anything, just take a look at what's inside, he said gently. He opened the bags to reveal a mix of everyday groceries, a few new clothes for Sophia, and resting on top, a box of brand new colored pencils, pristine and inviting. Sophia's eyes lit up, and she eagerly grabbed the box, as though it were a precious gem. Pencils, she cheered, clutching them to her chest. Thank you, mister, Emily whispered, her eyes focused on her daughter's joy, though her attention lingered on the contents of the bags. She opened her mouth to say something, but Keanu cut her off. I know what you're thinking, he said softly. But this isn't charity. It's just a little help to make things a bit easier, he added reassuringly. Emily shook her head, the emotions bubbling up. I'm not sure I can accept this. Keanu placed an envelope on the counter. This is for your rent, just for this month. And there's one more thing. He handed her a crumpled flyer. Emily read it carefully, puzzled. Asterisk, culinary course for single mothers. She blinked, not quite understanding. What's this? She asked. It's a free cooking course, Keanu explained. It covers everything from professional cooking techniques to the business side of things, in case you ever want to turn it into something more. Emily stared at the flyer, her mind racing. Why are you doing this? You don't even know us. Keanu smiled, a warm yet serious look in his eyes. Because you deserve it, he said, and sometimes a single act of kindness can change everything. Emily exhaled deeply, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Keanu replied softly. "Just think about it, and know that someone believes in you." Sophia, still holding her new pencils, looked at the flyer in her mother's hand. "Mama, will you learn new recipes, like the ones Grandma used to make?" she asked eagerly. Emily glanced from her daughter to the flyer, and in that moment, something in her shifted. A small glimmer of hope appeared. Emily held the flyer, looked at Sophia, then back at Keanu, still unsure but with a renewed spark in her eyes. "Maybe it's time to try," she whispered. What Keanu had in store next would turn out to be even more life-changing. Months passed since that day. The culinary course Emily had taken didn't just sharpen her cooking skills, it opened up new possibilities she hadn't dared to dream about. With every class, her love for food grew, along with the realization of its ability to unite people. Keanu kept his word, working quietly behind the scenes to create something bigger. While Emily was learning, he made connections, gathered support, and found the perfect little spot in the neighborhood. Simple, yet welcoming, it was the ideal place for what he had in mind. One special morning, Emily and Sophia arrived at the location, uncertain about what to expect. Keanu stood by the entrance, his trademark calm smile on his face. "What is this?" Emily asked, her eyes scanning the storefront. Keanu stepped aside, revealing a sign above the door, elegantly displayed in flowing script. Asterisk, La Cucina de la Nonna. Emily froze. Her face registered shock as she pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to contain her emotions. Tears began to silently trickle down her cheeks. Sophia, her face alight with excitement, clung to her mother's arm. "It's your restaurant, Mama," she shouted, pulling Emily toward the door. Emily turned to Keanu, her expression a mixture of disbelief and wonder. "Did you really do this?" "Why?" Keanu asked, a smile playing on his lips, though his tone was sincere. "Because you deserve it. Your story and your talent are unique, and the world needs to see them. No one should ever give up on their dreams." Together, they walked inside. The restaurant's interior was modest, but exactly what Emily needed to begin her journey. It had a practical kitchen, neatly arranged tables, and charming touches that reminded her of her grandmother's eatery back in Italy. Sophia eagerly ran to a small corner where a table was set up for kids to draw, complete with the colored pencils Keanu had given her months earlier. Emily's fingers glided over the surfaces, still in disbelief that this was really happening. She turned to Keanu, looking for the right words. I don't even know how to thank you for this." Keanu's voice was soft. "No need to thank me. Just do what you do best. Cook, bring people together, and pass this kindness on when you can." A few days later, the grand opening took place, and the restaurant quickly became a beloved hub for the community. Emily crafted dishes that felt like stories, each one inspired by her grandmother's recipes but infused with her own creative touch. The food was extraordinary, but what made the place truly unique was the heart Emily poured into every detail. During the opening night, Sophia sat at a table handing out menus she had designed herself. In the kitchen, Emily was busy preparing lasagna, while the restaurant hummed with laughter and conversation. Keanu sat quietly at a corner table, taking it all in. When Emily brought a serving of lasagna to his table, she sat down for a moment, smiling warmly. "I never imagined I'd be here," she said, her voice full of appreciation. Keanu looked around the room and replied, "But you deserve to be. What you've built here, it's something everyone needs to experience." As Emily scanned the vibrant restaurant, she realized that her dream had been revived. But the real transformation was more than just her own. The ripple effect of Keanu's simple act of kindness was beginning to touch the entire community. The smell of freshly cooked meals filled the air, creating a cozy atmosphere that enveloped the small restaurant. Emily carefully arranged each dish with the same passion and care she had always carried within her. The tables at La Cucina della Nonna were filled with cheerful customers, exchanging laughs and sharing meaningful conversations. It had become more than just a place to eat. It was a space of connection, a place for stories and community. Sophia, always with her colored pencils in hand, moved between the tables, proudly distributing menus she had drawn herself. She loved talking about the restaurant, often telling everyone it was inspired by her grandmother's treasured recipes. Keanu sat at his usual table, quietly observing, with a contented smile. He understood that the change he was witnessing went beyond the lively crowd surrounding him. Emily approached him with a cup of coffee. "You always sit at the same table," she said with a playful grin. Keanu smiled back. "It's the best spot in the house. I can see everything," he replied. Emily sat across from him, her eyes sweeping over the restaurant. "I never could have imagined this. Not a day goes by that I don't thank you for everything you've done for me and Sophia. You changed everything." Keanu gently shook his head. "No, you changed everything. I just gave you a little push." She returned his smile, but her expression grew serious. "I'll never forget what you've done for us, and I promise to pay it forward." Keanu gave a nod. "That's all I could ever ask for. Kindness is a cycle. Now, you have the opportunity to pass that kindness forward to someone else." Just then, Sophia walked over to the table with her sketchbook in hand. "Mama, look at what I drew." Emily took the sketchbook and smiled softly. The drawing depicted the restaurant, now filled with customers, plates of hot food, and a large sign outside boldly displaying La Cucina della Nonna. "It's perfect," Emily said, pulling Sophia into a tight embrace. Keanu stood up and placed a few bills on the table. "I think it's time for me to go," he said. Emily, a bit surprised, looked at him. "Why? You're part of this," she replied. "I always will be," he answered with a smile. "But this place is yours now. It's your turn to keep writing the story." He gave Sophia a warm smile before making his way to the door, leaving Emily deeply moved. As she watched him walk away, Emily realized her life hadn't just changed. It had been completely transformed, and now she was ready to be the spark that would ignite someone else's transformation. What came next would mark the next chapter of her journey, a journey of courage, resilience, and the incredible power of kindness. The message I hope to leave with you from this story is simple, yet profound. Never stop dreaming. Dreams are the flame that keeps hope burning within us, even through the toughest of times. They give us purpose, guide our steps, and provide something worth fighting for. Alongside dreams, kindness acts as the thread that ties us all together. A quiet yet powerful force that has the ability to change lives by reminding us that we're never truly alone. Dreams and kindness together have the power to change the world, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet moments, one life at a time, one act at a time. So believe in them, nurture them, and spread them, because that's how we create a brighter future for all of us. Never stop dreaming. If this story moved you, we invite you to dive deeper into more tales of hope, compassion, and resilience. Tap the screen to keep the warmth alive and uncover more.